Over the last decade, Wall Street has quietly swallowed more than 30,000 independent American businesses. Your neighborhood was bought, and nobody even notified you. You look to President Trump, expecting Washington to finally step in and stop this. You expect the highest office to break these silent monopolies and protect your wallet. But the terrifying truth isn't about who is sitting in the Oval Office. The reality is that this financial machinery was locked in place a long time ago. The rules of this game were written before he even stepped back into the room. You think your local vet is independent? It isn't. And that $3,000 bill you just paid? That wasn't inflation. That was ownership. Private equity doesn't buy companies. It buys everything you think is still local. Your vet, your plumber, your hospital, all of it. Now imagine waking up at 2 in the morning. Your dog is violently ill, struggling to breathe. In a sheer panic, you rush to the local veterinary clinic down the street. It is the exact same clinic your family has relied on for over a decade. You trust this place. You feel safe here. But when the appointment is over, you are handed a bill that makes your stomach drop. $3,500 for basic diagnostics, blood work, and overnight fluids. It is a staggering, suffocating number. You blame inflation. You blame the rising costs of medical supplies or supply chain issues. You are completely wrong. Behind that familiar sign, your local vet is no longer a small local business. It was quietly acquired 6 months ago by a multi-billion-dollar private equity firm. They simply bought the practice, fired the highest-paid senior staff, and raised prices by 40%. They implemented strict, unyielding quotas on how many expensive tests doctors must order per patient. You thought you were supporting a community cornerstone. You were feeding a faceless financial behemoth. This is not an isolated incident. A silent invasion is tearing through the American economy. From the hospital where your children were born to the plumber who fixes your sink. They are all being swallowed whole. We look to our politicians to save us, asking, who stops this? But the devastating truth is that the system has already bought the referees. Welcome to the Wealth Archives. Today we expose the greatest financial illusion of our time. This is the plumbing monopoly you never see. To understand how you are being exploited, you must first understand the mechanics of the predator. What exactly is private equity? They raise unimaginable pools of capital from wealthy individuals, sovereign wealth funds, and institutional investors. They buy companies, aggressively improve their efficiency, and sell them for a massive profit. It sounds like standard capitalism. But modern private equity is not about building better businesses. It is about financial engineering, wealth extraction, and stripping assets down to the absolute bone. We are not talking about small investment clubs. We are talking about financial leviathans firms like Blackstone, KKR, and Apollo. These are the architects of the new American economy. While politicians argue on television, these firms are quietly buying up the hospital you are born in, the house you rent, and the nursing home you will die in. They are completely legal, entirely ruthless, and they answer to almost no one. One of their most dangerous tactics is called the roll-up strategy. Let us say you live in a mid-sized American city. There are 20 independent plumbing companies fiercely competing for your business. Then a massive private equity firm comes into town. They buy one of the local companies. 2 months later, they buy another, and another. Over 2 years, they purchase 15 companies. Crucially, they never change the names on the sides of the vans. Why? Because maintaining the illusion of local competition is vital to the scam. When your pipe bursts at 2 in the morning, you might call 3 different local plumbers. What you do not realize is that all three phone numbers route to the exact same private equity-owned call center. There is no actual competition. There is only a secret monopoly. They immediately double the prices. The small business economy is being violently hollowed out, wearing the skin of mom-and-pop shops. This is the exact financial weapon they use to bankrupt companies on purpose. They use a financial weapon known as the leveraged buyout, or LBO. You just need to watch the classic mafia movie, Goodfellas. In the film, the mob takes over a struggling restaurant. They run up the credit line to the absolute maximum, only to sell them out the back door for pure, untraceable profit. They blatantly refuse to pay the suppliers. When the credit is finally exhausted and the place is completely, utterly ruined, they simply light a match, burn it down for the insurance money, and walk away incredibly rich. Wall Street took this exact mafia strategy, put a suit and tie on it, and made it completely legal. They use a tiny fraction of their own cash and borrow the rest, often up to 80%. But here is the sick, twisted genius of the leveraged buyout. The private equity firm does not take on the debt. They force the company they just bought to take on the massive debt. Imagine taking out a massive, multi-million-dollar mortgage to buy a house, but somehow legally forcing the house to pay the mortgage itself. Immediately after the ink dries, the private equity executives pay themselves millions of dollars. The target company, highly profitable and debt-free just a week prior, is suddenly crushed. They are suffocating under the weight of massive, unpayable interest payments. They fire loyal staff, reduce product quality, and slash health benefits. And if the company eventually collapses and files for bankruptcy under the immense debt, the private equity firm does not care. They already extracted their millions years ago. The hard-working employees lose their jobs. The creditors lose their money. The community loses a vital local business. But Wall Street walks away completely unscathed, looking for their next target. It is a perfectly legal wealth extraction machine. This is how they legally drain hospitals and why your doctor looks so tired. Nowhere is this parasitic model more devastating and more deadly than in the American healthcare system. Over the last decade, private equity has aggressively targeted hospitals and emergency rooms. In just an 18-month window, at least 8 major U.S. hospitals closed their doors forever. How does a hospital, a literal cornerstone of public health, go bankrupt? Enter the sale-leaseback scheme. When a private equity firm buys a hospital, they are not looking at patient care. Immediately after the buyout, the private equity firm takes the hospital's land and physical building. They sell it to a third-party real estate investment trust, pocketing hundreds of millions in pure cash. But the hospital still needs a physical building to operate in. So, the private equity firm forces the hospital to rent back the exact same building at an exorbitant commercial rate. The hospital is suddenly bleeding millions in cash, forced to pay massive rent and debt interest. They fire highly experienced registered nurses and replace them with cheaper temporary staff. They cut the cleaning staff, leading to increased hospital-acquired infections. Patient mortality rates objectively rise. People literally die because of a spreadsheet. Eventually, when the hospital can no longer afford the crushing rent, it declares bankruptcy and shuts its doors forever. But the private equity firm? They made their hundreds of millions on the real estate flip years ago. This is how they trap the poorest Americans, turning desperation into a dividend. They want customers who are entirely trapped. And no demographic is more trapped than residents of American mobile home parks. For decades, mobile home parks were the last bastion of affordable housing for retirees and veterans. Then, private equity noticed the math. It is not actually mobile. Moving an old trailer costs upwards of $10,000. The residents are literal prisoners to the land they sit on. Private equity funds have swooped in. The absolute second the ink dries, lot rents are immediately increased by 50%. When a grandmother on a fixed Social Security check cannot afford the massive rent hike, she faces an impossible choice. The private equity firm steps in. They generously offer to take the home off her hands for pennies. If she refuses, they outright evict her, legally taking possession of the abandoned trailer. It is the calculated strip mining of America's most vulnerable citizens, orchestrated by billionaires. This is the terrifying final phase of the takeover. You might ask yourself, if this system is so blatantly predatory, why hasn't it stopped? Because the beast is only growing hungrier, and its targets are getting exponentially bigger. As artificial intelligence demands unfathomable amounts of physical power and server space, private equity giants are buying the internet, ensuring the critical technology of tomorrow will be toll-gated by the exact same predators. Yet, as we look at the chaos, the ultimate question remains flashing in the dark. Who stops this? Why does the government allow this systemic looting to continue? Look at the politicians we put on our voting ballots. The unspoken reality is that private equity is one of the largest political donors in the world. This means the billionaire destroying a hospital chain pays a lower effective tax rate than the exhausted nurse working inside it. They own the politicians. They own the real estate. They own your local plumber. The private equity takeover is a masterclass in modern legalized plunder. They have rigged the game thoroughly, leaving behind a permanent trail of debt, bankruptcy, and broken communities. The secret monopoly thrives in the dark. It relies entirely on your ignorance. But now, you see the strings. You see the cold machinery behind the curtain. But the truth is out, and the wealth archives are officially open. Refuse the illusion. See the board for what it truly is. Because what you understand, they can no longer use against you.